Hello there. They call me Mystery. Now, I have recently come across some important concepts through memes which I think are worth talking about, especially since we consider ourselves revolutionaries. Now, one will be controversial and hard to hear for some. The other, less so. But let's start with the hard one to challenge people. And let's see if you can handle it. The left. Now let's just think about this one for a moment because it's really important. If we know anything as revolutionaries, it's that corporate motives are shady and are always about the bottom line, profit. So if your agenda or your issue of the day also aligns with the mainstream media, big tech, governments, the rich, and the scary pharmaceutical industry, you have to be asking yourself, as conscientious, self-respecting, and critically minded individuals, why? Is something else going on here? A great example, which is controversial but nonetheless important, is the left's reaction to the pandemic. You had government, mainstream media, and big pharma coming together to tell people that the only real way out of a crisis was a consumer good brought to you by the pharmaceutical industry. A usual target of progressive thinkers, but this time, their savior. Now, I am not going to go into the debate on whether vaccine was necessary or not. What I want to point out is that pharmaceutical conglomerates made an absolute killing of the pandemic and the rollout globally. If it was so important to stop the spread, then why wasn't this medicine socialized, with patents given to governments and distributed to populations on a needs basis? It's no coincidence that many of the poorest countries around the world that needed medical intervention much more than richer countries with established healthcare systems didn't get the same access to this consumer good. I am just going to have to say it. It was because they couldn't pay for it like their rich counterparts. It's also no coincidence that the big pharma companies who produced the vaccines made billions of dollars on the stock market during the pandemic while the global economy came to a halt. The lesson here is that if you're aligning yourself with the mainstream media narrative, which also corresponds to the agendas of big business, the corporate world generally, and the wealthy elite, come on. You gotta be at least questioning why. If history has taught us anything, it's that we cannot trust what is delivered to us by corporate media about things corporates will profit from. You are not anti-establishment if you pick a side because this issue has a left-wing or right-wing tendency. To hell with identity politics. Think for yourself. Make up your own mind. Always ask the question, why are they wanting me to think about this and who's benefiting from it? Anti-immigration memes. Now, this is a massive problem in politics for most free countries around the world. The irony of anti-immigration versus taking care of one's own. It is utterly ostensible that the justification for being anti-immigration is on the sole basis that you want to look after your own people first. What a joke. Because we all know the reality here. When the question does become what to do with our own needy or those on social welfare, it's always to attack them. The same attack that's used against migration. People will attack welfare recipients and the poor in their own country for being freeloaders, leeches on the system, and berate them for not getting a job or being useless members of society. But then turn around and say, we can't take on any more migrants into this country because we need to look after our own first. Well, come on. Which one is it? When presented with an opportunity to look after our own people, it's too overbearing on the system. It's the proposition, actually, of lefties who don't know anything about running an economy. Now, the thing about this obvious jumping between contradictory arguments is that it's brought to you by the mainstream media and conservative think tanks. That's why it makes no sense. The use of migrants or one's own poor is the same fear package in a different context. It contradicts so obviously to those with enough brain power to be able to hold two things in their memory at once and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. And it makes even less sense though when you consider that the entire modern world was built on the back of migration, and that migration today is needed more than ever to help patch up skills shortages and labour shortages thanks to obvious deficiencies in the capitalist world system. But hey, it's easier to jump between irrational fear from the outside to the inside just attacking other working people, because that's what they told us to think today in the news. Now, if you thought that that was interesting, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with someone who should hear this. And subscribe for more. There is much to learn before we can unlock the revolution. Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.